Let's talk about flush rivets. A flush rivet is a way to bring two pieces of material together, but rather than having the rivet head protruding out of the material, as it is over here on this piece, where if I push this piece of copper up against the rivet head, you can hear it clicking because it's running into that rivet head, because the rivet head is sticking up out of the metal surface. If I flip this over though, you can see how this piece of metal just slides over the rivet head, because the rivet head has been filed down and it is no longer protruding out of the metal surrounding it. The way that we do that is by taking a burr of some sort. In this case, I'm using a setting burr to carve out a pocket for that rivet head to mushroom into. You could also use a ball burr if that's all you have. Either one would work. I prefer the setting burr because it creates kind of a chamfered edge around the hole that the rivet head protrudes through. And that chamfered edge allows that head to mushroom out into that cavity. So that's what locks the pieces of material together. The chamfered edge fills that cavity, and it creates a rivet that you can then file off the surface. Anything that happens to be protruding above can be filed off, and then you get a nice flat surface on the material, as opposed to this. So if the rivet happens to be on the inside of a bracelet and you don't want to feel that rivet head, this would be a good solution. I don't know, if you rivet things to a ring, you could remove that rivet head and it won't be a problem, like the sun is right now. So for simplicity's sake, I'm going to be using this single-sided rivet. I've soldered my rivet material to the copper backer here, but this works the same whether you have a through rivet or a single-sided rivet like this. So if I take my other piece of material and drop it on there, obviously we need to trim down that rivet to the appropriate length, and I'm going to maintain my 1 millimeter protrusion there. And I'm just going to slip these two pieces together and score that rivet right where I want to cut it. Just like that. I can pull these pieces apart, and then I can proceed to cut this with my jeweler's saw. Another way to do it is if you happen to have a pair of flush cutting pliers or wire cutters, you can now, using the flush side of the cutters, you can line this up right on that scored mark there and remove that extra material. Flush cutting pliers, they say they're flush cutting, and they do a pretty good job, but there's always a little bit of a point on the end there. So I will always take my file and just swipe across there a couple of times just to remove that little protrusion. Okay, so now I can drop this on there, and you should be able to see my rivet head is standing proud there just a little bit. But the trick to a flush rivet is to countersink that hole, okay? So with my setting burr, I'm going to just go in here and cut a bit of a chamfer around the perimeter of that hole. So if I zoom in here, you should be able to see there's a little bit of a countersink around the perimeter of that hole. And that is the area that once we start to hit the rivet head, that is where that mushrooming effect of peening out the rivet head is going to fill that cavity. And then we can remove the material that's protruding up with a file, and it will sit nice and flush with the surface of our material, of the metal that we're riveting to. So I'm going to place that on here, grab my riveting hammer, my ball peen hammer, and I'm going to tap down on that rivet head. So the piece will look like this. So that chamfered area has now been filled with that material, that the rivet that had been mushroomed out. So at this point, I should be able to take my file and file across this to remove any remaining material that's standing proud of the surface of the copper. And this might take a little while. Okay, with just a little bit more filing, I could get that to all but disappear. And actually, there's a couple of spots here in this. This was just scrap copper that were a couple of low spots. But right here is where my rivet head is. And you can just barely see it because that was brass and the surrounding material is copper. If that rivet was copper, it would almost disappear. You'd never even see it. So that's an easy way to make a flush rivet. Now obviously this surface has been filed, so we'd have to do something about bringing it back to an acceptable finish. But that is how we do a flush rivet.